Aaron and Melissa here for True Stream Media.
Hey guys.
And the more we continue to research food and be astounded by the practices that get things to our dinner plates, we come across not only the general presence of genetically modified foods, chemical additives, antibiotics overused in raising livestock, heavy metals in our foods, and other issues. We come back again and again to the issue of allergies, which by all accounts are on the rise in the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And for me personally, it's been hitting home. For the first time in my life, I know a lot of people in my personal circle, friends, family, acquaintances, with significant food allergies. I'm talking about people with Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, celiac disease. Melissa's one of many people with gluten intolerances. This is beyond just your normal allergy to peanuts or bee pollen or something, which can be life-threatening, but in the past have been isolated to just a few people. We're now having widespread allergies, and a lot of them are crossing over and compounding and contributing to some pretty serious ill health. So with that in mind, we thought we would look at the relation of the documented health risks of genetically engineered foods as written in Jeffrey M. Smith's Genetic Roulette, a best-selling book backed up by documentation and lots of studies.
We're going to actually look at soy. 3 of the top subsidized crops in this country are corn, wheat, and soy. And actually, it's been declared that if you are what you eat, then Americans are actually made out of corn and soy. They've done hair tests. They've found that the average American has 70% of their hair is made of the same carbon as corn. There's corn in everything. There's soy in everything. And now, the majority of corn and soy in this country is actually genetically modified, up to 90%, I believe it is. And he's talking here about allergies and immune responses, and we just have some quotes here that we thought were kind of pivotal on this whole idea. According to the Indian Council on Medical Research, the allergenicity potential of GM food has often been difficult to establish with existing methods, as the transgenes transferred are frequently from sources not eaten before. Many have unknown allergenicity, or there may be a potential for the genetic modification process to result in an increase of allergens already present in the food.
And you find that in general, these allergic reactions are like immunodeficient reactions, defensive and often harmful immune system responses to an external irritant. And in this case, it's been linked more and more to GM foods on top of all the other existing causes. And they found in one study that a GM enzyme was produced in peas, and it triggered an inflammatory response in mice, suggesting it would cause allergies in humans. When they do the lab studies, a lot of times it implicates human causes as well. In this case, the protein in its natural state is produced in kidney beans and not harmful, but when it was present in the GM peas, it provoked a response. Why? Well, it may have to do with the unpredictable, subtle changes in the attached sugar chains when it undergoes the genetic modification process.
What they're saying there is that by itself, it might not be inflammatory, but when it's put into the peas, that addition makes it inflammatory because it's not natural. Here's another one. Potatoes engineered with a snowdrop lectin cause immune damage to rats. Here too, the protein in its natural state was found to be safe. But the cause was therefore either a modification in the protein or some other change in the composition of the potato brought about by the GM transformation process. And it also goes on to say that soy allergies jumped 50% in the United Kingdom just after GM soy was introduced. So if GM soy was the cause, it may be due to several things.
And we see again documented cases of rising allergies correlated with GM. I mean, more study needs to be done to see if it's actually involved in the cause, but in the evidence for this statement, he says, number one, the GM protein that makes Roundup Ready soy resistant to herbicide does not have a history of safe use in the human diet, and it may be an allergen, but of course we're being exposed to it in our diet at a very rapid pace and through a lot of our foods. And one section of its amino acid sequence is identical with known allergens.
And the other thing about that is that Roundup Ready, that's glyphosate. That's the main ingredient. And they've done tests on the glyphosate, and they've already found that to be harmful. But what they never did tests on were the inert ingredients in Roundup, when in combination with the glyphosate, which apparently has now in recent independent studies even worse effects than just the glyphosate itself.
So at number two, Jeffrey Smith says a portion of the transgene from GM soybeans is transferred into human gut bacteria. This can have so many important implications, especially for these allergens we're talking about: IBS, Crohn's, celiac, gluten intolerance, all this stuff. The transferred genetic makeup included the promoter, which turns on and off the transgene. In addition, the gut bacteria survive doses of Roundup Ready active ingredient glyphosate. This suggests that the transgene continues to produce its Roundup Ready protein from inside the intestinal bacteria. If this proves true, and repeated research shows that it may be true, after long periods of stopping eating GM soy, it may still be constantly exposing the body to its potential allergenic protein. That's that statement where Jeffrey M. Smith says over and over in interviews that the intestinal bacteria may be a factory for producing a pesticide inside the human gut.
Basically what he's saying is this might turn you into a pesticide factory because your human gut bacteria is continuing to produce these pesticides long after you stop eating this food.
And
that's amazing.
If it doesn't trigger an allergy, it may be weakening your immune system over time in a chronic fashion.
Science is still coming out to show just how important gut bacteria is, all the different processes within the body that's involved in. 70% of your immune system resides in your gut. There are studies to show that your gut bacteria talks to your brain. It helps regulate the processes of putting out different endorphins. It helps with different muscle contractions, involuntary muscle contractions that you need. All kinds of things are going on with this gut bacteria, and more they're finding out how important that is. So for this to be messing with that, let's just say on a basic level, for this to be messing with your gut bacteria, for this chemical to be doing something like that, the implications are just huge.
It is. Number 4 is more general, but there have been several studies to specifically bring this up. Changes in GM soy DNA may produce new allergens. When they change the DNA in any genetically modified crop, plant, organism, it's introducing new DNA sequences, and especially in your diet and your gut, that means it's things that you're not used to eating, and the potential for allergens is really just off the chart. So that's on top of everything else. Number 5, another study verified that GM soybeans contain an IgE binding allergenic protein not found in non-GM soy. And so what that means is IgE is immunoglobulin number E, and they found that this attaches to proteins when there is an allergen present. When there's an allergenic response, IgE tends to bind to the protein, which is pretty much a tip-off and test that it may be an allergen that's present. So they found this is bound to the GM soy proteins, giving pretty good evidence that it may be causing significant allergies in people, animal studies, you name it.
Number 7 says that increased residues of Roundup herbicide in GM soy might contribute to increased allergies. Now in soy in particular, they found pretty high numbers of residue in comparison with other crops for this Roundup. In fact, the symptoms identified in the UK soy allergy study are among those related to glyphosate exposure. The allergy study identified irritable bowel syndrome, digestion problems, chronic fatigue, headaches, lethargy, and skin complaints, including acne and eczema. Symptoms of glyphosate exposure include nausea, headaches, lethargy, skin rashes, and burning or itchy skin. It is also possible that glyphosate's breakdown product, AMPA, which accumulates in GM soybeans, might contribute to the allergies.
But if these symptoms and these conditions seem general as well, you have to remember that the introduction of glyphosate, the introduction of GM crops, may be adding to the burden that's already on your body with other things that are causing or contributing to digestion problems, chronic fatigue, and in combination, for some people, it may be making it even worse.
All the chemicals and preservatives that are already in the highly processed foods, especially in the American diet, it's insane. The implications, again, are huge.
And the more things you put in that are potential allergens that the body doesn't know how to digest, at some point you're risking overwhelming your immune system, your digestive system, and everything else that's in combination with that. Number 8, the GM protein in the soy may have changed due to misfolding, attaching to molecular chains, or rearrangements, unstable transgenes, and that again speaks to the general process of recombining DNA, of genetically modifying things, you get a little bit different result. They may assume it's basically the same, but it just may not be true.
Well, and that also goes back to these companies regulating themselves. They're basically doing their own safety studies, and they're saying, yes, we think it's safe, or yes, we think it's not substantially different than its non-genetically modified counterpart. Well, I don't know about you, but having a company tell me that they did their own safety study and they found it was safe, there's no independent third-party studies done, that really doesn't make me feel too much better about it. If I'm trying to sell you something, am I going to tell you that I've done studies and found that it's questionable? Am I going to do a long-term study? Well, I would if I'm responsible and I care about humanity. If I just want to sell you something, I'll just tell you whatever I want.
Mice fed GM soy had reduced levels of pancreatic enzymes. When proteins digesting enzymes are suppressed, proteins may last longer in the gut, giving more time for an allergenic reaction to take place. Any reduction in protein digestion could therefore promote allergenic reactions. And again, if your body's not used to digesting it, it's going to cause additional problems, and again, give it longer time to be exposed to potential allergens.
And if you go to your average grocery store and look at a food package on the shelf, you're going to find soy is in so many things that'll blow your mind. I mean, from food additives that are based with soy to soybean oil to soy protein isolate, which is basically MSG. I mean, soy is all over that grocery store.
And unless you're seeking out specifically organic, it's probably
Genetically
genetically modified. BT toxin, the genetically modified plants that grow their own BT toxin, have their own specific allergen issues, and it's just generally a rising trend of allergies. Let's look out for this. Let's be aware of GM foods. Let's educate ourselves about the entire food supply. We'll bring you more later as we have a greater understanding and as you share information with us. Thanks for watching TrueStreamMedia.com.